Thank you for joining Money Simplified, your guide to money and mutual funds, presented by Franklin Templeton Mutual Fund. We appreciate your participation. At PersonalFN, we are committed to help investors achieve their financial goals and objectives. Our core proposition is built around unbiased research and financial planning. We wish to thank Franklin Templeton Mutual Fund for partnering with us in this investor education and awareness initiative. Welcome to session 24 of Money Simplified, your guide to money and mutual funds. We are glad to have you with us for the 24th session on, where we talk about first life goal, which is planning for contingencies. Alright, so now let's get started. Prudent planning is the first step in achieving any objective in life. Planning not only makes your job easy, but also gives you a sense of direction to achieve your objective. However, you have to adopt prudence while planning, and more so when you are dealing with your finances. Planning for your contingency fund is an important aspect for a smooth financial journey. So in this session, we'll explain the first and the most important step in financial planning, that is planning for contingencies. First, let's understand what is contingency planning. It is planning for rainy days. By keeping aside money for any unknown and uncertain event that may occur but it is not likely or intended, such as medical emergencies, loss of job, or any other eventuality for which you haven't planned for. If not taken care of, such events may derail one's finances and lead to financial crisis, and hence you need to plan well in advance. Planning and providing for unforeseen events in advance means you are in the process of building a contingency reserve. Such a contingency reserve may help you tide over unexpected situations that may drain your finances and may not be covered under any other means. Now you may ask, how much contingency reserve should be maintained? Well, you should maintain a minimum of 6 months of expenses as a contingency reserve and a maximum of 24 months. This will enable you to cover expenses in case of a contingent event occurs. So while keeping money aside as contingency reserve, you ought to prudently ascertain your expenses for contingency planning to be effective. This is because if you underallocate, you are not being effective in such a contingency planning exercise. You see, maintaining less than 6 months will mean that you do not have sufficient amount to deal with emergencies, and maintaining more than 2 years will mean that you have extra cash on which you are losing out on investment opportunities. Thus, you should always maintain a reasonable amount of contingency reserve by accounting for expenses wisely. What kind of expenses should be covered in contingency planning? While creating a contingency reserve, you should be taking into account all such expenses that are rather unavoidable. You can consider your household expenses, which are towards your basic needs and utilities, lifestyle expenses, where you may control a few of such expenses, medical expenses as they are unavoidable, and travel expenses, EMI on loans, where you should remember that it is not advisable to default on your loans, children's education expenses which are a priority, and any other unavoidable expenses. You see, of these expenses, some are unavoidable expenses which are to be paid even if there is a loss of income or no income. Let's take an example to understand this better. Example 1. Mr. Shah is a government employee and has a very stable career. His monthly expenses are household expenses Rs 25,000, lifestyle Rs 10,000, medical Rs 5,000, children's school fees Rs 2,500, and an EMI of Rs 12,500. So here let's understand how many months of contingency reserve should he maintain and what should be the amount of his contingency reserve. Since Mr. Shah has a very stable career and his job is secured being a government employee, 6 months of contingency reserve should be sufficient to take care of his emergencies. Thus, as a multiplication of his expenses which he is incurring, the amount of his contingency reserve will be Rs 3,30,000. Now let's take another example of an individual, Mr. Tiwari. Mr. Tiwari is an IT consultant and his career is highly dependent on India's economy. In a booming economy, his income doubles, while in a weak economy, it is vulnerable. His monthly expenses are household rupees 10,000, lifestyle rupees 5,000, medical rupees 15,000 and travel rupees 10,000. So here let's understand how many months of contingency reserve should he maintain and what should be the amount of his contingency reserve. Since Mr. Tiwari's income is highly uncertain and can also lead to low income in the case of a weak economy, he requires to maintain 24 months of contingency reserve. Thus, as a multiplication of the expenses which he is incurring, the amount of his contingency reserve will be rupees 9,60,000. And what are the options to maintain the contingency reserve? Contingency funds are meant for emergencies. So returns are secondary and therefore one should make a sensible decision while building a contingency reserve. You see, in case of any urgency, money should be available for use within 24 to 48 hours. Accordingly, there are various options which you may consider for keeping money aside for your contingency needs. Some of the prominent options are: number 1, cash in bank. You can maintain a small portion of your contingency reserve in a savings bank account for liquidity which can be accessed any time. But as it is next to having some money in your wallet, it may hardly earn for you. Do not forget, the longer the money lies idle, the more is the loss in value. Hence, you can limit the amount of contingency money kept in your savings account. Then the next is banks, fixed deposits, sweeping account and flexi deposits. For a safe and a better return, you can keep some money in a bank fixed deposit or a sweeping account or have a flexi deposit account with your bank. If possible, you should link it to your savings bank account to withdraw it in an emergency. But withdrawing such money prematurely may attract penalty, or in some cases you may even lose a portion of your interest earned based on your bank's policies. Then the next is money market mutual funds. As many people fear losing money, they do not invest or invest such contingency money only in options like FDs, which can attract penalty on premature withdrawals. Many people in India are still unaware of various investment options suitable for their short-term investment like liquid and money market funds, which have the potential to earn returns more than the interest on a savings bank account. Let us now delve a little deeper and understand how you can maintain your contingency reserve through mutual funds. Maintaining your contingency reserves through mutual funds. While mutual funds offer you various investment options targeted towards various investment objectives, there are some categories of mutual funds that invest in instruments of very short-term duration and are suitable for maintaining one's contingency reserve. The first under that is liquid or money market funds. These funds can be considered in order to park a portion of one's contingency funds with a shorter time horizon of less than 90 days. As most liquid funds do not have any exit load, one can exit any day without a penalty. On withdrawal, the redemption proceeds are usually credited to your bank account within 1 to 10 days. Then the next is liquid plus or ultra short-term debt funds. These are funds that invest in instruments with higher duration as compared to liquid funds. As the duration is slightly higher, the risk is slightly higher as well, but they have the potential to yield returns higher than those clocked by liquid funds. While most of these funds do not carry exit load, there are some ultra short-term debt funds that have an exit load period of 7 to 30 days. Hence, the money that may not be required within 3 to 6 months can be kept in these funds. Then the next is floating rate funds. They aim at generating returns in line with the prevailing interest rates and are suitable to hedge a corpus against interest rate risk. While these funds carry less interest rate risk, they are meant for investors with a time horizon of around 6 to 12 months. Short-term debt funds. There may be time when you may not be using a portion of your money for long, say next 12 to 24 months. Money meant to take care of your medical emergencies, etc., can be kept aside on a slightly longer duration. Short-term debt funds invest in instruments with a duration of around 1 to 2 years and hence can be considered where the investment horizon is of around 1 to 2 years. Do not forget, Many short-term debt funds may attract an exit load if withdrawn within 6 to 12 months, so you need to plan accordingly. Now, before we end our learning session today, here are some points to remember. Contingency reserve helps you pay for unexpected expenses. So create a contingency reserve for a minimum 6 months of expenses and up to 24 months of your expenses based on the level of your income. As contingency funds are primarily meant for emergencies, the returns should be secondary. You should make a sensible decision while maintaining your contingency reserve. It would be prudent to diversify your contingency funds across suitable options. And last but not the least, planning for contingencies should be considered as an important life goal. So to end our learning exercise today, we now invite you to test your learning by taking up this simple quiz and win exciting prizes. Thank you for participating. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.